So they're going to share lots of good information with us. And they said that they will cover questions at the end. So if you have questions, you can type them into the chat, but don't be alarmed if we don't get to them right then. It'll be late, a little bit later on. Okay, Carrie, Susan, y'all take it away and feel free to share your screen.
All right. Can y'all see us? See us and the slides? Okay. All righty. Here we go. We're going to talk about motor milestones and when to ask for help. So, a lot to cover in a lot amount of time. Basically, these are our objectives. Change it. The biggest thing we're talking about is just where to get started. Carrie and I have been doing this a long time. Carrie, 27, me, 39 years. So needless to say, we've been around a little bit. One of the biggest things is you'll hear the first time you see a kid, are they going to walk? Are they going to talk? Yeah. And we don't have a crystal ball. We can't tell them, no, they're not going to walk, or yes, they're going to walk. We don't want to give false hope, but we also don't want to burst their bubble. So we just kind of say we're going to work all together and see how it works. One of the big things is knowing what the flow of the milestones are. And we're going to give a disclaimer right now. We've been doing this a long time, so we're teaching this the way we know. And let's just say it's not a test thing, so we're not really going directly by the new things. So wherever. A big deal is starting where they are, not where they should be. A lot of times you go see a kiddo and the mom's like, well, they're 2 years old, they're supposed to be doing this. And you'll say, okay, well, we're going to start what they're doing right now and work forward. So breaking those goals down into steps. A lot of times the IFSP goal is walk and talk, and they can't even hold their head up yet. So we're going to start slow.
And we're also going to kind of talk about, you break those milestones into, or their steps. Each milestone is a step, but there are a lot of little steps that you have to work in each skill set to reach the next one.
And knowing when to ask for help. We are very lucky in our department that we have DTs and therapists. So we have a lot of folks to be able to do shout outs to. So we're lucky in that point. Not everybody has that. So one of the biggest things is helping caregivers understand what a brain injury is. We hate that developmental delay diagnosis, because if I heard that, I would think, oh, well, they're just behind, they're going to be fine. So some kids will be, but some kids have brain injuries. We talk about tone, helping the family understand the diagnosis. A lot of times they don't know what that means. Having cerebral palsy versus just having a developmental delay. So that's sometimes hard thing for them to hear. But we're also going to know how to get the child to that optimal arousal level. We'll talk about that for a little bit. Being an advocate for their child, I really believe that is the biggest job we have in early intervention, is that when they do leave us, at whatever point they decide to, they are able to make sure that child gets what they need.
And the last but not least on helping them is just helping them celebrate what their child can do at the moment. And looking at when you're working on something, I know you may want them to walk, but we are doing something in between. And each time we come, they're doing something a little bit better or trying something new. Celebrate those steps that they are achieving.
Because they always get told what they can't do. So we really like to make a big deal about what they can do. So a lot of the things that are limiting factors that, some of our kids got here early, they didn't have any problems, they just need a little help catching up. Some of our kids have other things. So, syndromes can cause differences, like Down syndrome with tone. Spina bifida, that spinal cord doesn't regenerate, so you have to work around those limits. They're saving babies early. Just in my career, it's changed so much. I think we're treating 22, 23 week kids right now. brain injuries are really hard for parents to understand because your brain doesn't grow back. So once those accidents have happened, then that brain is not going to come back. Luckily, early intervention is pretty much based on the whole fact that kids' brains are very plastic at this age. That tissue is not going to grow back, but your brain sometimes can find a new pathway. So that's kind of what we work on. We're not, saying it's all going to come back, but we may find a different way to do it. And then sometimes we have those kids, we don't know why they're not doing what everybody else is doing. And I tell everybody all the time, it's like human beings are hardwired to do this stuff. Our job in early intervention is to find out why they can't. So those are kind of the things we'll be looking at. We're very lucky. We both have grandchildren now, so we don't have to get any releases for these kids because they're ours. So one of the first big milestones or just activities is lying on the back. Please let me put this 2 cents in. Please encourage families to get kids out of stuff. We'll talk about some supported seating in a minute, but the floor is the best piece of therapy equipment that anybody can have. So the reason my granddaughter is all bundled up because they're out on the patio doing some things on her back. So being on your back means your head and arms are forward, you're bringing your hands to your mouth, you're bringing your head to midline and reaching for your hands and feet.
And as you can see in the picture, she has toys over her to use as a motivation to do all of those things.
And then tummy time. Lord have mercy. I feel like I say this till I don't know what, go crazy, but tummy time is just really important, especially now with the back to sleep. They don't sleep that way. So having time to practice that is so very important. And it's not always pleasant at first, but kids kind of learn to be able to, play that way and offering things that maybe they can only see when they're on the floor. Or this is Carrie's 2 grandkids and the older ones down there kind of as moral support. And another thing is tummy time doesn't have to be on the floor. The older I get, I'm still on the floor, but I really understand some of our other caregivers that getting on the floor is just not an option. So, tummy time can be on your chest. It can be across your lap, sitting on the couch. It doesn't necessarily have to be flat on the ground.
Right. And I will say, I know a lot of times we hear, oh, they just don't like being on their tummies, but it's such a good position to work in. It works on so much. Like in the picture, my grandson is down there with my granddaughter who hated tummy time. So we did everything that we could to encourage it. So he was helping us out that day.
And also don't think, a lot of parents are like, well, I'm going to go buy this mat I saw at Walmart and it's only $35 and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, go flatten out 2 Amazon boxes and put a blanket on it and go. You don't have to have all that fancy stuff. So this is kind of where we ventured off what everybody else is saying, but this is what we think. So you start off with your head down and your bottom up. That's a really important position. And a lot of our preemies don't have that because they didn't come out that way. So sometimes you will even go back and put a kiddo in that position because that's where you work on weight bearing through your arms, holding your head, those kind of things. And then we want them to push into the support surface. A lot of times we're so eager to put those arms up under them so they can be up on their arms, but they're not ready for that. They start off by just pushing into the support surface. And then they need to learn how to shift their weight down through their bottom. And those of you who know us, we do that a lot. I've made weighted panties before to keep that weight down through there. So, and then they're up on their elbows, and then they come up on their elbows and they kind of fall over, and then they're lifting up one arm to play. Pivot and prone is a really big one. They're like, oh, we want them to creep or crawl. We want them to go. Going in a circle is a big deal. So, and then rolling back to your tummy, and then beginning to that's a crawl, creep, crawl. Sorry, we can't see our thing. But anyway, so that's kind of the flow that we're basing all this on. So rolling is a big deal, but once again, you can't do it if you're not on the floor. So really encouraging people to give kids time to do that. And just playing back and forth. It's amazing what they learn just by learning how to work off the surface and to just push down into all those things. So pivot and prone is a really big deal. And a lot of parents kind of don't know or don't think about that. They just kind of rush through. But if you put your baby on the floor and they're kind of turning, you want to encourage them to go to the side. You can talk about it.
Yeah, pivot and prone helps promote using both sides of the body at the same time, but separately. So like when you're going to turn, you're pushing through with one side and lifting and kind of moving the other side over. You bending one knee, one leg's usually extended while you're trying to turn. So it's working on a lot of that. And that way they're starting to begin to learn control and how to coordinate those movements to get to where they want to go. That toy that's over there that's just out of reach, but if I turn, I might can get it. So some ways to encourage that is offer toys to each side. Don't just always stick something right in front of them. You know, if they're not really turning and you're just starting out, maybe put it just slightly off to the side where they might shift just a little bit. And then once they kind of get comfortable with that, move it on over where it's in sight so they'll be motivated to go get it. And give them time to practice. You know, don't just put something, go, oh, they can't get it, so I'm going to move it back in the front. We want to give them time to practice and help them figure out how to do it first if they're having some problems with it.
And that brings up a good point we should talk about when you're talking about being on your belly. Our kids who have visual limits, it really changes things because why in the heck am I going to hold my head up if I can't see anything? So there's a lot of other classes you can take on that one, but that's a big point to think about too. So kind of make sure that they didn't miss a step. Some kids are going to do things without doing other things, but it's kind of nice if they can go through all the steps. Make sure they can breathe when they're on their belly. I used to be that person, put them on their belly, put them on their belly. Well, then I realized, the rib cage is so tight, they can't breathe when they're down there. Or our kids on that have trachs, always encourage the mom to ask for the flexi trach so that it can be moved out of the way when they're on their bellies. But a good old towel roll, blanket, swim poop noodles, those under the arms are really good, but that's after they have started pushing into the floor. Don't do that right away because they have to learn that. And then another trick is just offer things they only get to play with while they're on their tummy. And I know you feel like, oh, these babies don't know that, but they do. They really do. So supported sitting, we just want them to start to work on sitting up. It's important to allow face-to-face contact with folks. Our more involved kids, it's very important for their brain to be doing what a child their age is doing, even though their body can't do it. I said I'm gonna make a t-shirt, never let a body limit what a brain can do. So we need them to be where they can learn.
So I don't know in the picture, I don't know if you can tell because it's got the pretty butterfly blanket, but she is supported on the couch with her bottom kind of down in the crease between the cushions and in the back so that will help support her a little bit while she's sitting up there, and you can see her hand is out.
Prop sitting is really important. As therapists, I know we are so bad about, oh, we need to learn to sit up. We need to sit up just like this and all this. Babies learn to sit up by propping forward. So letting them use that body, and sometimes they will have their face on the ground. But just letting them practice, be able to come back up too.
Like you can see she's kind of in that kind of in between prop sit. Usually they'll start out both hands kind of down on the floor. Like Susan said, they're leaned way forward. Then they kind of figure out how to, oh, I can prop my hands on my leg and I can sit up a little bit taller. So and move on to independent sitting. In this picture, I felt like she was looking so proud, like, look, I'm hands-free, I'm sitting here. You show improved strength and balance in the sitting. It allows for active movement of your upper extremities. You're not kind of stuck with those hands down. Now you can manipulate objects and kind of increase your engagement to play with a variety of things. And then that also leads into beginning to be able to do those transitional movements to actually move in and out of sit.
I'm gonna show this.
If you want to, I don't know.
I don't know if y'all can see this. What's the next one? Oh, we're just gonna go ahead and do this. So one thing we talked about is even when kids aren't ready to, they're not able to come to sit by themselves, go ahead and show mom how to do that. This is the only baby we could find in this building. But, so if they're on their back, having them roll to the side and then giving some support on that hip and help them to come up. Mama can't do that every time she picks them up. Sometimes she's rushing to go do something, but if they're down on the floor playing, just practice rolling to the side and then helping stabilize that hip and helping them get back up. You go back to slide. Well, we lost.
Shouldn't have done that. Hold on.
She tries to get fancy. Nope. Nope.
Oh no. I've done something.
You might try stopping your sharing and then reshare it if you've lost some control.
Yes, we lost control a long time ago.
Teams just does some odd things sometimes.
All right, so we talked about it already, but remembering that babies learn to sit by propping first, not always sitting up straight. You sit when you're placed first, and then you learn to come to sit. And then we talked about taking them through those motions.
And that's something I've really encouraged parents to do. You know, we're all guilty of, we need to get baby from point A to point B. So we just reach down, scoop them up and go. But I really talk to the parents about just take those, few extra seconds to go through, showing them how to roll over to their side and push up through their arms to move in and out of that position.
Okay, if y'all, anybody that knows us know that we love a diaper box. You can do so many things. Practice, practice, practice. Having some way
There
for
it
a
is. Okay,
child.
hold on. Let me look at something really fast because I wanted to see. Let's see.
Are we good? I didn't know somebody's talking. Can y'all hear us?
You're good. You can go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, so these are pictures actually of my granddaughter when she's learning to sit. So in the kitchen there, she could sit up, but she might fall over at any minute. So the diaper box allowed her to be in the kitchen sitting while my daughter's cooking or whatever. And she learns to catch herself by falling to the side. Laundry basket is the best thing in the world. Amazon box. I have a pretty big kiddo who has CP, and mom's been sitting her in the big old Amazon box, and we got a fun noodle in there, and she can put rings on it. So a lot of times people will say, well, why can't we just go buy the Easy Up or whatever those things are? Those are fine, but these work well, and they allow them to kind of have to work a little bit more, and they don't cost anything.
And they're accessible. Just about everybody has a diaper box
Yeah.
and a laundry basket at their house.
Yeah. So we love a box. So benches, you can even tell this in these pictures, they're not sitting on a bench. When we first started doing home visits, we were dragging all that stuff into somebody's house, and then we'd put it all back in the car and take it. And, we know better now. So Anderson there is sitting on a clear shoebox thing, which we love. And then what is?
And my Lacey is sitting on a baby food box.
So whatever's in the house. One time I had a mom pull out the wedding album. She goes, this is the best use of that $3,000 I've ever used. So we were sitting on the wedding album, and that works. And if you have a child that is just stuck on their belly and they're crawling on their belly, but they just will not get up, sitting on a bench always helps. And I think it's because of all those reasons we have there. So moving forward, you know, therapy and developmental, we're the only people that use different words, but crawling is on your belly and creeping is up on your hands and knees. So that's always confusing. So once again, hey, this is, and Carrie is the one who does all this. I would not, I'd be writing it on a piece of paper and taking a picture of it because I could not do this. But we talk about kids, they're creeping, and then they're going to pull up to tall kneel, then they're going to pull to stand, they're going to cruise between surface, they're going to walk with their hands held or behind a push toy, and then they're going to start stepping between furniture, independent steps, and then walking as main form of mobility.
And I know that they have recently taken creeping out of the Milestones, but I still had to put it in there because in order to pull up to something, you have to
But
kind
nobody
of
can
get there over to something. So we just still kind of,
We did it
work
our
on it.
way. So
okay, so we just put, so hands and knees to creeping. You have to be on your hands and knees because creeping is on hands and knees. Your weight bearing through your arms. When you're in this position, you're working on strengthening your upper extremities, your neck, your lower trunk, you know, your back, your tummy, your hips, and those upper leg muscles. You're working on gaining stability, control, and balance within your body. And that's the position where you start working on weight shifting to prepare to figure out how to start moving yourself forward. But there is a progression to it. All babies don't just come from the floor straight up to hands and knees. You'll see that they, you know,
say something.
okay.
Go ahead.
I'd say you'll see that they get up through their arms, but their weight shifted back over their heels. So they're kind of figuring out how to be up higher, looking at stuff, but they've got that support shifted backwards to kind of help them hold that position. And then we'll start reaching up with one hand and that's good. Thank you.
Let me put something in. We can never remember all this stuff and we have way too much to say. Just a note on here. If you have a kiddo that wears AFOs, really talk with the therapist or the doctor or somebody, or just, this is my 2 cents. Sometimes creeping on your hands and knees in a pair of AFOs, you don't use your booty muscles. So if you want to try that when you get home, get on the floor and put your feet flat and then put your feet up like they would be in a pair of braces, and you can tell the difference. So sometimes our kids will maybe not wear the tall part of the brace, just wear the short brace, or just don't wear any braces at all when they're trying to creep on their hands and knees.
Okay. So, and just going through that progression, you know, they shift where their bottom is more in a line with their knees, not sitting back over their heels. You'll start seeing them what we call lift and replace that hand, like they're figuring out how to lift it up, but they're not quite sure how to move it forward. And then they progress to figuring out how to kind of start coordinate that movement to move forward on their hands and knees.
Another good trick is if you have a kid that's on their belly crawling, if you throw a bunch of stuff on the floor, like a comforter or some things that they have to get over, that will also help facilitate getting up on us hands and knees. This is my favorite picture. Carrie had this whole child that does the laundry, so I'll let her talk about things.
Okay, so this is a picture.
And it's routines based too.
Yes,
Look
this
at
is
that.
a picture of a child in a nice tall kneel position. She doesn't have that weight shifted back over her heels, but she's up and her body's kind of in a straight line while she's working on something. And this helps strengthen core muscles. If you have ever put yourself in that tall kneel position, you can feel everything that's having to work to hold yourself up there. So it develops control. It activates weight shift and to grade the support while you're reaching for objects. works on stability and balance. It gets you into a higher upright position. You can see more, you can reach more. So they start to begin to explore those surfaces that are just not down on the floor.
Pulling to stand. I love those little chunky legs. It's good because you're weight bearing, it's strengthening your hips and knees, and you have your hands up on the support. You know, you don't realize that not everybody has a couch. So whatever's in the living room that's accessible to pull up on and it's safe, you know, a good heavy storage container, whatever. One thing that we do sometimes is we'll tell parents, well, you take your couch cushion off and then it would be lower and it'd be the perfect height. And some people freak out about that, but you know, and I always have things accessible. Real fast, I had a family one time, the mom was a PT at Campbell Clinic and the dad was like some research exercise physiologist or something. And here the PTA comes walking in to tell them what to do with their child, but they didn't. Mom said, I don't do pediatrics, I don't know. So they had a whole workout routine. They would take her upstairs and do all this stuff. And every week I would come in there like, she's still not cruising. She's still not cruising. Well, there was nothing in the living room for her to be able to walk along. So we kind of had to do some tweaking on that. Also, this is another place you might see a flag. If that kiddo pulls to stand and they don't pull up through a nice half kneel, they just kind of drag themselves up there. That can be a flag for some weakness or some tone going on. So pulling to stand in a pretty way is always good. Okay, this makes my mother roll over in the grave because we all thought that hard bottoms from the Stride Right were the very best thing in the whole world, and every good grandmother would go buy some. Well, American Pediatrics now says that barefoot's best until you need something for warmth or safety, or if one of our kids needs something for good alignment. They're not actually necessary, and they may actually slow things down. Like if you think about trying to learn to walk in a pair of combat boots, that's about what that is. So if they need a little bit of support, and we are recommending some shoes, good tennis shoes are the best. And that good does not mean the expensive ones. That means the ones that have a nice flat bottom. They don't look like a grown person's shoe. They're flexible. They have soft sides. That's what we recommend. So don't think they have to go buy special shoes. Now, you know, if the family are really attached to some Jordans or something, that's fine. But they're not real flexible on the bottom. So cruising. And yes, this is my granddaughter cruising at the Garibaldi's. But walking along a support is so important because when you learn to shift your weight to one side to the other, that gets you ready for walking because you have to shift your weight to take a step. So they're using their hands to guide their way. They're exploring. They can walk along the furniture, and then they start doing where they're like walk between the furniture, you know, like the stretch. Walking along the wall is a good progression from cruising.
That's harder because you're having to use a different type of support surface to move around.
So that's a suggestion we make a lot of times, is try to see if they'll walk on the wall. And then maybe walking with one hand on the support, you know, give them a bucket or a purse or something to carry so they only have one hand to hold on. Pushing things, this is, you know, it's hard when you've been a therapist for 100 years and you have grandchildren and you pretty much buy everything you've ever recommended. This is my favorite push toy because it doesn't have any bells or whistles on it. But it doesn't even have to be a push toy. It could be a big box that's heavy. That laundry basket again, weight that laundry basket down and let them walk behind pushing that. It's strengthening their arms. It's providing a lot of good input for where their body is. It helps them know where they are in space. So we really encourage, I don't know who decided to put all those light up music things on them because that's all they want to do is push those buttons. So just, I mean, every daycare you've ever been, they gripe because the kids are pushing the chairs around, but that's what they're doing. Independent steps. they're, holding their balance without support, they're controlling their body, and they're starting to walk as their main form of mobility. They get more independent, they get into everything. But they're starting to explore more things within the environment. And we are made doers because we've been doing it a long time. A blanket can be used for 1,000 million hundred things. A box, laundry basket, we've talked about, pillows, benches, whatever you make them out of, push toy. Riding toys are always my go-to gift for 1 year old for kids. Because they're just, you can work on getting on and off of it. You can work on walking with it. So now let's talk about things that are going to get in the way. Sometimes you can practice on something, but if you have some stumbling blocks, you're going to have to probably reach out for some help to work on those things before you can move forward. Two of those things are tone and the good old optimal arousal level. So we're going to kind of talk about those real fast.
So tone is the definition, the amount of resistance that the muscle has during rest or in response to a movement. But tone can make it difficult to work on the milestones and kind of get in the way of function. And practice will not work sometimes if tone is in the way.
So you have high tone, those are kids that just, you feel like whenever you try to move them, you feel like you're going to break them. You'll hear that called hypertonicity, spasticity, or tightness. And then you have kids on the other end of the scale that are real low kids. A lot of times kids who have Down syndrome have a lot of very low tone. You'll hear it called hypotonicity, floppy.
That was low.
So if you think about yourself and anyone else we're all along that continuum. I am that low tone kid that slouches all day, and that's just the way I am. Carrie's more on the high end. So there's always that extreme on both ends. Those are the ones that we're worried about. The kids that are kind of, us as humans in the middle, we've kind of figured it out. So optimal arousal level, this goes back, some of this is based on a lot of sensory stuff, but if you just think about, like today I was running around like a nut because I'm getting ready to go out of town. So my brain is not really always where it should be. If you think about if you're going to work or you're going to see a kid and 14 people have called you with a problem, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm just, bouncing off the walls. Or you might have stayed up late with a sick child or something, and you're like, I got to get this together. So some of our kids feel like that all the time. So we need to help them get to that middle point. If you go in and a child is so lethargic or their tone is so low that they can't really move, then doing some things to help increase that tone. We're not changing their tone, but kind of alerting their body. That's a whole nother presentation, but we'll do it. And then low tone, the low tone kids, we need to bring them up. Those high tone kids are the ones that are so tight that you can't move. So just very basic. If you have a kid that's low tone, you want to do things, or that is not alert, then you want to do things that kind of wake them up and brighten them up. If you have a child that's very tight, those are your slow, rhythmical, singing slow songs, jiggling a little bit, if you're trying to move them, those kind of things.
I say, and sometimes the arousal level is not just based on what their tone is. It could be just kind of sitting in one spot, not being motivated to move, or bouncing off the walls, climbing to the ceiling type things. So you want to find that in between, either bring them up, try to bring them down so that you can kind of focus and do an activity together.
And one thing, what's the next slide? Go back just a minute. One thing, like I said, we've been doing this a long time, and we see a lot of situations that are not the best. So sometimes a kid is very lethargic because they're not getting enough calories, or they're not getting the right calories. So you have to have enough energy to move. So our next slide, we will talk about some of the things that tell you that you might need some extra support. So tone differences are a big one. I know a lot of DTs don't have the luxury of having the medical birth history and all that. So you may not even know if this child had a bleed at birth or anything like that. So you might just notice, hey, they really don't use that right arm very much. Or mama can't even change their diaper because their legs are so tight. Or they hold their hand or their foot funky, or they don't, when they stand up, their feet look different. So those are some things that would get in the way. Then orthopedic needs, of course, you have kids who already have contractures, which makes me sad because another good little tip I tell all my families, if you can get every joint to full range of motion every day, hopefully you will not lose any of that mobility. But there might be an orthopedic reason they can't. So that's why you might need help with that. Body alignment and posturing, some of our kids just are crooked already, and we have to have some help with that. We have kids who have limb differences. They might not have all their arms, or I have a kiddo right now that just has a palm and then these little balls for fingers. So just kind of figuring that out. Sensory issues, are such a big one. We're saving kids early, so preemies have tons of sensory issues. We have a lot of kids who've been exposed to just chemicals and substances and everything that cause a lot of problems. And then, there's some of these kids that we don't really know what's going on, but something's different. So those are the ones that might avoid being moved. Those are ones that don't like to ride in the car, or they just bounce off the wall, literally, just all the time moving. They might avoid certain textures, like they don't want to tag in their shirts, or they don't want to eat because they don't like the way the food feels. They may get stuck in certain patterns. Like we have some kids that just get stuck in sitting. They learn to sit, but that's all they can do.
Like they can sit for hours on end, but cannot move out of that sitting position, and sometimes not even getting themselves in that sitting position. They have to be placed there.
And to rotate to get out of sitting, if you ever had a really bad head cold or had your head messed up for some other reason, if you think about that, you don't move your head. You kind of just walk around and try not to move it. So some of our kids feel like that. So being able to rotate and reach down to come out of sitting, or even rotate to play with a toy, that's just too much. So that would be a big flag. Knee walkers. A lot of times knee walkers are kids who have a lot of vestibular issues. They don't know where their body is. And so that might be a big thing. Booty scooters. I cannot stand all those commercials where they're laughing at these kids, how they're moving across the floor. No, we don't want them to do that, but sometimes they do. Dietary concerns, we talked about that. I don't know why everybody doesn't automatically feed their child 3 times a day and give them 2 snacks, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So we need to make sure that they're getting their feeds. A lot of times these kids are on G-tube feeds and they still don't get what they need. Other issues could be speech and language delays. They may not be able to hear you. My grandson did not babble like his sister does because he had to get tubes, and I don't think he could hear. We've already talked about vision. That can be a big stumbling block. Just general processing. Are they taking all this in and being able to use what we're giving them to make something happen? That can show as, speech and language. That can show as movement, lots of things. Another thing is working around all their medical equipment. We have kids that are on vents and sat monitors and all those kind of things. We have another presentation, wires tied, I don't know what it was, tubes and something, that we would share with y'all who want to, that talks about just how to work around all that stuff too. So who do I reach out for help? In a fantasy world, there's a speech therapist and OT on every corner, but we know that does not happen. In our department, we do have the luxury of being able to ask for someone just to, hey, I eyeball this kid and tell me what you think, or give me some ideas on what to do. So these are kind of our suggestions of who to ask for help from.
So we just kind of made a list of all of those concerns that we had just talked about, and then who might be good to consult with. So reach out to those disciplines if you have them available. But talk to the parent and have the parent discuss those concerns with the PCP or the service coordinator so that they can help maybe possibly bring someone in to do an evaluation.
And I'm not always the best about this, but try, if the child is getting therapy somewhere, if you have questions or concerns, reach out to those therapists and say, look, I know he's just doing this funky thing. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And most therapists, most good therapists, will share things with you to work on those kind of things. So if you look down the list, we have tone, we have orthopedic things, sensory, dietary. Like I said, you can't move if you don't have any fuel. So speech and hearing, fine motor and vision, processing, and then medical and assistive equipment. A lot of our kids have a lot of stuff. So reaching out to whoever ordered it, the provider, or even our kids that have a nurse in the house. One of the first questions I ask them is, what numbers do I worry about? How low can this sat monitor go before I need to stop what I'm doing? And they'll tell you. And so that gives you a little parameter of what to do. Woo, we made it. Okay, so let's go. These are references. Carrie and I joke about the majority of this is just stuff we learned the hard way, but she does put a lot of good resources on there.
I'd say, but as far as the references, there are several that have the developmental milestones. Each one, has it. Some of them actually have like some activity ideas. A couple of them have an app that you can put on your phone as the milestone tracker.
What's a real good one you were talking about?
And I also found one from Child Muscle Weakness. It has a guide for therapists, and it kind of goes through some of those milestones as far as sitting, and had something about breathing and some other things, but it tells you what it should look like. But it also has an area that has a flag. Like if you are seeing this or you are not seeing this, you might want to kind of consult with someone further to have that looked at.
Go to the next one. This is basically on here because if we don't get to a question today, or if you just have a kiddo, you just want to call us and say, hey, I got this kiddo, they're doing this funkiness. What do you got, any ideas? Please reach out to us. We love it. So if you have any questions we don't get to, but we're going to try to go back to the questions now. You know how to get back?
You can stop sharing and y'all might be able to see the chat easier. And also, I'm getting ready to drop the link for the survey into the chat. And once it goes in, it'll be good for 20 minutes afterwards. So remember, this is how y'all are going to get your certificate. So you have to fill out the survey, and then that will be your certificate of attendance or your training hours.
Any questions?
Let me refresh it. It's trying to come up, but it's not.
Are you all able to see the chat?
Not yet.
I am happy to read some questions off to you guys.
Well, that'd be perfect. Let's start with that
Yeah.
just to get us going while she's working on that.
Awesome. So we have a question here that says, what do you recommend for a baby that is stuck in the army crawl position and won't get on hands and knees?
The first thing I would do is the bench sitting. It has worked for lots and lots of kids. So if they're good at sitting and they're doing that commando crawl, get them up on something that's considered a bench. Anything that puts their feet flat on the floor and they have to sit up. That really does strengthen a lot of those muscles, because if you get on your hands and knees and try to creep on your hands and knees, feel how much your belly's working and how you're having to move to do that. So that is a real good thing. And like I said, also putting things on the floor that they have to crawl over, like a big, fluffy comforter or something like that.
Sometimes that will encourage them to push up on hands and knees in order to try to reach to get over it.
Awesome.
right.
Great information. Next question. I have a child that can get in the crawling position but freezes and will stay there and get tired but will not move. He starts crying for help. Mom will stand him up and he will stay there holding on until mom moves him. He will be stuck there and cry until mom gets him down. He's very stiff, seems to be scared to move. If a toy is too far, he won't reach for it because from what she's observing, it will destabilize him if he does move too much. He will give up and is okay with sitting there, or he will just cry for it.
It could be tone, it could be that he's so tight, he can't really transition. I guess we're just very sensory folks. My first thing would be some sensory stuff that, he can get up on his hands and knees, but you really have to be able to weight shift and move your head to be able to move your hands to move. And cruising, you have to be, aware of your body enough to know that if I move my hand, I'm not gonna fall down. So, if they want to email or text us, we can give you some sensory things to look at that might help mom.
Right, I'm gonna say, and down on hands and knees, I don't know if y'all have tried just giving some support up under that tummy or chest, just to make them feel a little more comfortable and kind of rely on that instead of having to fully rely on their own body weight, to see if you can help guide them forward a little bit.
And also, we do a lot. This is why neither one of us can walk very well, but we do a lot of things like over our legs, sitting on the floor. So if you're on the floor, you can put them in all fours over your leg and just see, if that little bit of support helps them, or if they can move a little better. That sounds like they don't know what to do. So sensory stuff is really important. So if you send us a email or something, we'll try to send you something back.
Wonderful. One other question. What do you recommend for babies that only scoot on their bottoms?
That's a hard one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've gone so far. When we had our own inclusive daycare, we actually put some non-slippy stuff on somebody's booty, so they just couldn't do it. But find out, some kids, that's just their form of mobility. I'm seeing a kiddo right now that older brother does have autism. He may or may not have autism, but it's a hard one because it's very functional. Like I said, if you think about if you've ever had a bad head cold or some other reason you don't want to displace your head, if you can sit up and just make your booty go, you don't have to do any of that. So sometimes that can be a sensory issue. They may have weak arms and legs that are getting in the way. So I think that would definitely be a reach out to a therapist just to see if, we do a lot of, and it probably not right, but some video and people and sending it to people to look at, but we'll say, look at this kid and tell me what they're doing. So that might be a thing.
Say, and just when you're practicing on it, it may not stop it all the time, but kind of set up some obstacles that he can't just scoot over, and see if that child will transition onto their tummy or to hands and knees to try to see if they can get over
A
it.
tunnel is a good thing, and that doesn't mean you have to go buy a tunnel, take a box, smush it down, and open both ends. You got a tunnel. Because sometimes if they don't fit in there sitting, and there's something in there that's important enough to get to, they might get on their hands and knees and try to get to it.
Awesome. And it looks like we have two more questions. I think we have
Okay.
time.
We do.
One is they had a question about assisting rolling over from back to belly.
Well, back to belly's hard to know. Rolling from your belly to your back, you just kind of fall over. If you want to send us the email, we'll send you some more specific stuff. But if they're on their back and you want them to roll that way, then, bending that knee up and just helping them guide over to roll. Some other good tips are, y'all think I'm crazy about couch cushions, but you can do so many things with them. You can make a little incline out of a couch cushion and put them at the top and take them through the motion. And sometimes gravity will kind of help work on that. Sometimes you might need to back up and make sure they can reach to their feet, because in order to roll, you have to have belly muscles. So if they haven't really worked on getting those feet to their hands, then they may not have enough belly strength to work on that. So,
And another thing I would think is in your practice, if you help them get over to their side, sometimes it takes them a little bit longer to kind of process some of those movements and what they need to do. And they might get to their side and then go backwards. Just encourage them to actively do as much of the movement as possible and then kind of hold them there. Let them regroup and see if they can kind of finish that movement. So you're just kind of blocking them from falling back to their
so you're
back
not,
again.
you're not just totally doing it for them. You might get this far and say, okay, Johnny, rest is up to you. There's that toy.
And then use a toy,
Yeah.
move it around, kind of, look to see where they might reach for it
And then
and
just
slide it
help 'em.
around to see if it'll kind of help.
But a lot of times you just
Facilitate
need
that
to sit there
movement.
and wait a minute because we're so fast to want everybody to do things fast and do everything 3 times. It's written somewhere, maybe in the Bible, I don't know. But you do everything 3 times because kids, when they're learning something new, they do it over and over and over and over and over. So if you're working on something, at least do it that many times.
I think we had one more
One more question.
It actually, there's a couple coming in, so I'm just going to suggest to you all, if we don't get to your question today, please reach out to these ladies. They are a wealth of information, but we'll keep going until time runs out. But we have another one about, is asymmetrical crawling a concern?
You mean like one leg up, one hand down, I'm assuming.
Or just
Allie, Allie, you're welcome to unmute and ask the question, or maybe clarify if you're still in the meeting, about the asymmetrical crawling.
maybe crawling
Hey,
with
yeah.
shifted just to one side.
Yeah. So like if both sides of the body are not, mirroring each other as far as, the right arm moves, the left arm moves, like if one leg is hiked up and the other knee is down, like different things like that.
A lot of kids just do that. It's not our favorite thing, but I mean, if they're doing everything else the right way, that is not gonna kill them. But if you see some other tone differences, then that might be a time to reach out. That would definitely be one you might send a picture to someone and say, look at this, tell me about
I
that.
was gonna say, and if it's a child that's kind of seems to be using one side more than the other, then help facilitate that weight shift to get them over the other side and see if you can kind of help them do that movement. We always say we need to work to both sides. Don't just, focus on one. We got to learn how to do that weight shift and start using our body together.
If you see other tone differences, like when they're doing that, they have their arm up, and they're kind of moving differently. If you see anything that's like a flag for some tone differences, definitely talk to the mom. They might go to the neurologist, but they probably need a PT, OT input on that one.
Right. Another question, what tips do you have for new service coordinators responding to parents with developmental concerns?
I think that website that Carrie found was really good. Just kind of telling, about how things are broken down and what things to work on.
Let me see. I'm going to see real quick if I can find that to share it.
We got one more question.
Yeah, we can answer questions.
Yeah, we can look it up, but as far like questions like what is my child supposed to be doing, or why isn't my child doing it? Those kind of questions, or just, I guess I don't really know what all that question entails.
Yes, so I was the one that asked that question. So I've never been a service coordinator before, and early intervention is a new area for me. So I was just curious, like so let's say mom has concerns about Johnny, and and then she's kind of listing these things off to me. Like what are some good ways to kind of reassure mom, that that we're there to help, or things that you found that have kind of put mom at ease, when she's listing off, numerous concerns that she wants to see her baby
Do you
do.
work anywhere close to Memphis? You can just
Oh,
come ride with us one day. That would be fun. But,
yeah.
Yeah, I think just helping them know, I think we talked a little bit about that, is helping them kind of understand whatever medical diagnoses they have, because sometimes it may be in the chart, but nobody's really ever explained to them that they had a grade 4 bleed and that part of their brain is damaged. Or if you break the milestones down, like I said, a lot of times people are like, my child's 2 years old, they're supposed to be doing this and this and this. Well, you got to start where they are to build back up to that. So I think just a good overall idea about when the milestone should happen, are definitely in this link that Carrie found. There are some good books out there that like if you know the child has CP or they're talking about the child having CP, there's a lot of what is that, Parent's Guide to CP. It's got that cute picture on the front. I don't know. They make those for kids that have Down syndrome, CP. They might even have a spina bifida one. But I guess the big thing is just helping them understand what the flow is. If they have other kids, they might already know. But if they're trying to compare those other kids to a child that may have some medical issues, then it's harder. So maybe just getting some more input.
Yeah.
In the back. But I'm not teasing. You can come ride with us any day.
Okay.
We'll see.
I was just gonna real quick kind of show this guide. I ran across this when I was researching some things, and it's put out by Child Muscle Weakness, and it's a guide for therapists, for PT, OT, speech, early intervention professionals, and it just has different. It shows signs of weakness by age. And then it gives a description of it. It kind of gives you some tips, and then it shows like a flag. Like for this, if it says if a child has significant head lag at 5 months, you might want to do an evaluation. But just a yellow flag would be, is that head lag due to a torticollis? Or, is there some muscle weakness?
It's the other question.
Okay.
I don't want to cut you off.
that.
You can call us anytime you want to. We got one more question, do we say?
One more. Yeah, and we have about 3 minutes till we're done. So hopefully that'll give us enough time. But the question is, how can we help kids who persistently walk with a wide base of support?
Well, they all start that way. You need to look at their feet and see what their feet look like. They might need a little extra support. We do a lot of shoe inserts and things like that. Sometimes we'll lay down some good old pool noodles next to each other and make it a game. They have to walk between those. If they're walking with a real wide support, it may be weakness. So doing a lot of, we love some climbing on and off the couch. They sell that $300 nugget thing. I'm like, just take the cushions off
Right.
the couch, whatever.
I've used things. I used to have these, what I call them, my squishy steps, and they were like some stepping stones, and I would put them in a pattern where they were a certain distance apart to see if we could step on those. That was a long time ago when I used to take things, but now I'll just take pieces of construction paper. I found these cute little bunny feet around Easter, and you can put them out and kind of just encourage, play a game, see if you can step on them and try to, if you want them to step out further, if you want to bring those feet in closer, just trying to get them to follow that and see if you can work on it some.
And that's when a riding toy is really good, because when you're on the riding toy, you're really using your abdominals and you're getting your legs stronger. So, hit up somebody's garage or the Goodwill and see if they have one that they could use. But yeah, you have to remember, and sometimes you see that with kids that somebody just really practiced walking a whole lot. Because sometimes kids who took a little bit longer to walk, they are prettier walkers because they've already figured out all that stability. So just trying some of those things. But call or text us if you have any questions about that. If anybody else has questions, please feel free to shoot us an email. We can guide you toward a website or give you some info that might help.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Susan and Carrie, for presenting. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for such a wonderful session. You ladies are a hoot, and y'all know so much. So I have really enjoyed this. Somebody has a question about getting the PowerPoint. This recording it's going to be saved, and it will come out in a newsletter in the coming weeks, and so you'll have a link where you can watch this again. But we appreciate everything. Make sure that you fill out the survey so you can get your training credit hours. Okay. Any other? I think that's it.
Thank you. It's always fun.
Thank you.